My name is Camille Rayner. I'm 36, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the one everyone counted on. Organized, responsible, the problem solver. I built a life on reliability, on showing up, on doing the right thing. Until the day I realized my family didn't want me there. It happened on a Sunday, a blue sky afternoon that looked deceptively peaceful from the windows of my empty apartment. I had just returned from the gym, my hair still damp at the nape of my neck, when my phone lit up with a photo notification. My cousin Tasha had posted one of those cheery little Instagram stories with sparkles and music, smiling faces, clinking glasses, a happy 60th mom banner behind a table covered in catered food and a fancy cake. My breath caught. I tapped through slowly, one by one. My sister Alina laughing with her wine glass raised. My parents, arms wrapped around each other in a way they hadn't done in years. Even my ex-husband Dean standing behind my aunt, like he belonged there more than I ever had. And me? I wasn't in a single shot. At first I assumed it was a memory post, something from years ago. But when I glanced at the date, today, I felt something tighten in my chest like a pulled wire. I waited for the text to come in, the belated invite or explanation. Maybe something had gone wrong with the group thread. Maybe someone had forgotten to hit send. But the phone stayed quiet. I called Alina, straight to voicemail, then Mom. No answer. The silence buzzed louder than any ringing ever could. For a moment, I just stood there, phone clutched in my hand, the sweat from my gym clothes suddenly turning cold on my skin. It wasn't the first time something like this had happened, but it was the first time I couldn't talk myself out of what it meant. I'd been left out. Entirely. No invitation, no heads up, not even a pity text. I stared at the photos again. Everyone smiling, everyone together. Everyone fine without me. That night, I sat on the floor of my living room with a glass of red wine I couldn't taste, and tried to figure out what I'd done to deserve being cut out of my own family's orbit. It wasn't like I lived across the country. I was 20 minutes away. I saw Mom nearly every week, usually after work, when I'd drop by with groceries or help her with bills or whatever errand she had no time to deal with. I was the one who remembered birthdays, the one who drove Dad to his specialist appointments when no one else could, the one who'd been there when Alina had her second miscarriage and couldn't talk to Mom because you know how she gets. I was the one who got things done, the reliable one, the adult in the room. But maybe that was the problem. Because if I'm honest, this wasn't the first time I'd been quietly excluded. There'd been smaller moments before, inside jokes I didn't understand, plans made in group chats I was never added to, details about people's lives I only learned when something exploded. For years I convinced myself it was accidental, or that I was too busy to notice, too focused on work, on making my marriage work, on keeping it all together. But now there was nothing left to keep together. My marriage had ended a year ago in a barely civil courthouse exchange. My friends had scattered into new phases of life, and my family had just hosted a party that I was very deliberately not part of. I finally called my mother the next morning. She answered with that slightly distracted tone she always used when she wasn't sure what I was calling about. "Hey, Camille, everything okay?" I saw Tasha's post. Pause. "Oh, right. The party. You didn't think to invite me?" "It was just casual. We didn't want to make a big deal. You had catering." Another pause. "You've been going through a lot. We didn't want to overwhelm you." Overwhelm me, like being invited to my aunt's 60th birthday party was too much for me to handle. "Do you hear how that sounds?" I asked, my voice too calm to be anything but dangerous. "I'm sorry if it hurt your feelings," she said, and I could almost picture her shrugging. "You know we love you." I bit my cheek so hard I tasted blood. That word, if it hurt my feelings, as though it were some unlikely scenario instead of the truth echoing in my gut. "You could have just said you didn't want me there." "That's not true, Camille. Then what is? She was quiet for a moment too long. You've changed, she said finally. Since the divorce, you're colder, closed off. I let out a shaky breath. So you threw a party and left me out because I'm not peppy enough for the family aesthetic? That's not fair. No. What's not fair is pretending like this was some innocent mistake. I hung up before she could respond. And then I cried. Not the dramatic kind of crying they show in movies, but the quiet, guttural kind. The kind you only do when something ancient inside you breaks. I thought about the last year. How I'd folded myself up into a smaller and smaller version of who I used to be. How I'd made divorce look like a clean cut when it had gutted me. No one asked why Dean and I split. No one asked if I was okay. They just took his side, in their own quiet, cowardly way, because Dean had charm and charisma and an easy smile that made people feel comfortable. And I had grief, anger, silence. No one wanted to sit with that, least of all my family. I scrolled through my photos that night, searching for proof that I had once belonged, that I'd once mattered. And I found it, in old birthday pictures and family holidays where I'd done all the planning, in texts from years ago where I was the one initiating every call, every visit, every gesture of love. I'd been giving more than anyone ever asked for, and they never noticed when I stopped. The realization wasn't sharp. It was slow, like warm water turning cold. But once it arrived, I couldn't unfeel it. They didn't miss me. They just missed what I did for them. And when I stopped doing it, I became unnecessary. It wasn't just exclusion, it was erasure. And for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't sure who I was without being needed. That night, I opened my laptop and began to write. Not to them, but to myself. A letter I would never send, a reclamation, a promise. They called me Heartless after the divorce, but they never asked what it cost me to survive it, and someone needed to. I waited 3 days before I called Alina, not because I didn't want answers, but because I wasn't sure I was ready to hear them. There's something quietly terrifying about asking your sibling, your only sibling, if they left you out on purpose. It's not just about the party. It's about what it means, about every birthday, every holiday, every whispered conversation you weren't part of. Still, I called her on a Wednesday afternoon while I was pacing my office after a meeting that felt like noise. She picked up on the second ring. Hey. Her voice was clipped, cautious, like she already knew what this was about. Hi, I said. Do you have a minute? Kind of in the middle of lunch with a client. It won't take long. Silence, then. Okay. I didn't waste time. Why didn't anyone invite me to Aunt Delia's party? There it was, the question, thrown into the space between us like a grenade, waiting to see if she'd dive on it or let it explode. Alina sighed. It wasn't my call, she said, but the way her voice faltered told me otherwise. Mom said it was casual. You had decorations and catering. Well, yeah, but look, Camille, I knew if we invited you, it'd get awkward. I blinked. Awkward for who? For everyone, she said, sounding exasperated, like I was dragging her into something messy when she had better things to do. You've been distant since the divorce. It's like you float in and out and everything feels tense. You show up and people feel like they have to act perfect around you. That stopped me cold. I make people feel like they have to act perfect? You kind of do, she said, and I could hear her fiddling with something, maybe a pen or her keys, anything to avoid sitting fully in the conversation. You always have. You walk in and you're 5 steps ahead of everyone. You've got your color-coded planner and your schedule and your boundaries and your, well, actually voice. I didn't realize I was clenching my jaw until I heard my teeth grind. I thought I was helping, I said. I thought I was being dependable. I know you think that, she said, softer now, but it doesn't always feel like love when it comes from a checklist. There was a long pause, long enough for me to start counting heartbeats. "That's not fair," I said quietly. "No," she replied. "It's probably not, but it's true." I sat down on the edge of my couch, staring at the same worn spot on the rug I'd stared at the night Dean left. The same spot I cried into after signing the divorce papers. The same spot I cleaned obsessively when I had nothing else to control. "I was married to a man who hit me, Alina." Dead silence. "I didn't tell anyone, not even you, because I didn't want to be a burden. Because I thought if I kept everything organized, if I planned and gave and kept my voice calm, then maybe I could make it feel normal. Maybe I could fix it." "Cam?" "No," I said. "You need to hear this. You all think I walked out of my marriage like I was emotionally detached, like I just woke up one day and decided it didn't work. But I left because I was afraid of dying with my mouth shut, because the last time he grabbed me, I heard something crack. In my rib. And in my soul." I could hear her breathing. "Nothing else." "I never told you," I continued, "because you were dealing with your miscarriage, because Mom needed help with Dad's medical bills, because everyone already assumed I had it together, and I didn't know how to show you that I didn't." I heard a soft intake of breath, then a whisper. "I didn't know." "I know," I said. "That's the point. You never asked." There it was. The real wound. It wasn't just the party. It was the years of silence, of being seen as functional, not feeling, as the one who made everything happen, not the one things happened to. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice catching. I didn't want to see it. I thought you were cold. You seemed so composed all the time. I guess I assumed you didn't care." I exhaled, letting that confession settle. It didn't erase the pain, but it was something. "I used to cry in the garage before driving to Mom's," I told her, "just to get it out, so I could walk in and be what everyone needed." "That's exhausting." "Yeah, it was." There was a pause. Then her voice broke in a way I'd never heard before. "I think I resented you for always being the one who coped. It made me feel like a mess, like I couldn't keep up." That was it. The thing under the thing. "It's easier to resent someone than to ask why they're holding everything so tightly," I said. She laughed a little, bitter and sad. "God, you sound like a therapist." "I've had a lot of therapy." We didn't solve everything in that conversation, but something shifted. It was the first time in years I felt like we were talking woman to woman, not sister to sister in some unspoken competition. She wasn't defending herself. I wasn't performing strength. We were just there. I hung up and immediately burst into tears. Not because of her words, but because for the first time, someone had finally seen me. Later that night, I got a text from her. "I told Mom what you said. She cried. She didn't know. She wants to talk. When you're ready." I stared at the message, heart pounding. I didn't know what I'd say to my mother. I didn't know if I was ready, but I knew I wanted to be seen by her too, and that had to start with me showing up without my armor. I pulled my old journal from the shelf and wrote, "They say family is where you're supposed to be safest, but I think it's also where we hide the most. Because what if they see us and decide not to love us after all? What if they realize we're not perfect and walk away? But maybe the ones who stay, after the truth, are the only ones who ever really belonged to us in the first place." The next morning, I walked into my closet and stared at the row of blazers, all color-coded, crisp and clean. I reached for a black one out of habit, the one I used to wear to Dean's firm events when I needed to look together. But then I stopped. I ran my fingers across the fabric, soft but heavy, and felt it for what it really was, armor. I let it hang there and pulled on a sweater instead. Gray, loose, honest. Later that day, I met Maya for coffee, my old college roommate turned once-a-year friend, the kind of person you never lose completely because they knew you before you decided who to become. I hadn't seen her since the divorce. She messaged me after Alina's party photos started making rounds online, asking, "Hey, are you okay?" I told her the truth. I don't know. We sat outside a quiet cafe on the east side. Maya was already sipping something with oat milk and cinnamon, her dark curls pulled into a loose bun. She'd always had this grounded way about her, like the world could catch fire and she'd just pour another cup of tea. "You look, tired," she said gently. I gave her a dry smile. Everyone's favorite strong woman is a little cracked, I guess. She didn't laugh. "I mean it," I said. "I'm realizing how much I've built my life around being capable. Like it was the currency that made me lovable." Maya nodded, swirling her drink. "Makes sense. You were always the fixer, the one who made everything look easy." It wasn't easy. I know that now. I looked down at my hands. My cuticles were picked raw, something I hadn't even noticed until that moment. I think I thought that if I was perfect, then no one could hurt me. Or leave. Did it work? "No," I said. "Not even a little." We sat in silence for a bit. It felt safe, not awkward. "You know what I remember about you?" she said after a while. "Sophomore year, when my mom was in the hospital and I didn't tell anyone, you showed up with soup and books and clean laundry. You didn't push, you just sat there, quiet, present." I blinked. "I forgot about that." I didn't. She reached across the table and touched my hand. "You're not just the fixer, Camille. You've always had a soft heart. You just don't trust people to handle it well." Her words cracked something open in me, because she was right. Somewhere along the way, I decided vulnerability was too risky, that if people saw how deep I felt, they'd either use it or mock it. So I learned to edit myself, package the feelings into clean lines and calendar appointments, offer help instead of truth. But help, I was learning, isn't the same as connection. I drove home that afternoon thinking about all the ways I'd tried to earn love, through usefulness, through achievement, through silence. I thought about how many times I'd swallowed my truth to protect someone else's comfort, and how that silence had cost me pieces of myself. I used to think Dean's abuse started the damage, but the truth is, it only revealed what was already cracked beneath the surface. Control wasn't my strength, it was my shield. And now, I was tired of hiding behind it. So I said yes when Alina texted later that night and asked if we could all meet at Mom's house. "It's just us," she wrote. "Mom, Dad, me. No pressure. Just a conversation." I stared at the message for a long time, then replied, "Okay. Tomorrow?" Tomorrow. I didn't sleep much. My mind ran through every version of the confrontation. Who would cry? Who would retreat? Who would deflect? I imagined myself unraveling, shouting, collapsing into something messy. But when I arrived the next evening, I felt strangely calm. Their house looked the same as it always did. Blue shutters, trimmed hedges, that faint smell of lemon cleaner and old wood when you stepped inside. We sat around the kitchen table, the same one we'd eaten Sunday dinners at since I was a kid. Dad was there, quiet and stone-faced, like always. Alina biting her lip. Mom had her hands folded in front of her like she was in church. No one spoke at first. Finally, Mom looked up. "Alina told me what you said," she said quietly. "About Dean, about everything." I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, "that I didn't see it, that you didn't feel safe enough to tell us." I stared at the knot in the wood grain on the table. "You always seemed like you didn't need us," she said. "You always had everything handled." "I didn't," I said, my voice cracking. "I just pretended really well." Alina reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. "I know now." Dad cleared his throat. "I should have asked more questions. I just thought you had it under control." "I didn't want control," I said. I just didn't know how to be weak around people who expected strength. Mom was crying now, quietly. I think, I said slowly, that you loved the version of me who didn't ask for anything. That landed hard. No, Mom said through her tears. I didn't love that version. I needed her, but that's not the same thing. We sat in the silence after that. A different kind of silence this time, not avoidance, not dismissal. Just space. Room for things to land, for truth to settle. I think I resented you, Alina said suddenly, because you always did the right thing. And I didn't know how to compete with that. It made me feel like I was failing just by being myself. I looked at her, stunned. I never wanted you to feel that way. I know, she said, but we were both stuck in roles we didn't choose. You were the hero. I was the mess. Neither of us got to just be. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I want to change that, I said, but I need space to be real, even when it's messy. Mom reached across the table, her hands trembling. We want to know the real you, Camille. We just didn't know how to ask for her. And just like that, the mask cracked. Not all the way. Not yet. But enough for light to get in. After the conversation at my parents' house, things didn't shift overnight. No one burst into a sweeping apology. There was no grand family redemption arc. But there was a noticeable pause, an emotional softening, like the first warm day after a long winter. Something had been named, and now no one could unhear it. Still, the next few weeks were full of landmines. I found myself hyper-aware of everything, every text message that didn't come, every time my mother sent a group chat to Alina, but not me, every comment wrapped in sugar but laced with judgment. I wanted to believe things were changing, but it felt like everyone was waiting for me to reset, to go back to the version of Camille they knew how to function around. But I couldn't go back. And I didn't want to. One Saturday morning, I met Alina at the park. She'd suggested it, saying she wanted to talk in person, just the two of us. I agreed, partly out of curiosity, partly because I was tired of letting things simmer. It was early spring, the air still cool enough to need a jacket. We sat on a bench under an old oak tree, sipping coffee, watching kids play on the swings. You're quiet, she said after a while. I've been thinking. Dangerous. I smiled despite myself, the kind of dry smile only sisters can share after months of emotional shrapnel. I'm trying to figure out who I am, I said. Without the approval, without the checklist, just me. She nodded, then looked down at her hands. I've been thinking, too, about how I let the version of you in my head replace the real you. I looked over at her. What do you mean? She exhaled. I mean I made you the together one in every family story, the overachiever, the cold one, because it gave me permission to be the opposite. It made it easier to explain why Mom called you first, why Dad trusted you with their finances, why everyone expected you to fix things. I didn't interrupt her. I needed that version of you, the perfect one, because if you were flawless, then I didn't have to feel like a failure. I could just be the one who wasn't like you. But the truth is, you were breaking too. I just didn't want to look closely enough to see it. Her voice cracked. She looked at me then, not through me, not past me, at me. I'm sorry, Camille, for holding you to a standard no one can live up to. I stared at the coffee cup in my hands. It had cooled, but I held it anyway, grateful for something to hold. I let you, I said softly. I didn't push back. I thought being perfect was safer than being real. I was so scared of being a burden. You're not a burden, I shook my head. You say that now, but back then, when I finally left Dean and everyone acted like I'd just walked out on a decent man, I couldn't breathe. And no one asked why. Alina's eyes filled. I should have asked. Yeah, but I should have told you anyway. That moment, as small as it might seem, was the turning point. Not because it made everything okay, but because we stopped pretending. We let it be messy, and for the first time in years, we were sisters, not opponents playing roles in a family play written decades ago. The next week, my mom invited me to lunch. Just me. Not Alina, not the cousins, not a family gathering where I was expected to bring a side dish and a perfect smile. Just me. I almost didn't go. I stood at my front door with my keys in hand, every muscle in my body resisting it. I imagined myself sitting across from her, sipping tea and pretending I wasn't bracing for impact. But something deeper nudged me forward. When I got to her house, she opened the door like she'd been standing behind it, waiting. "I made your favorite," she said, "butternut squash soup." That small gesture nearly undid me. We sat at the kitchen island, the same one where I'd done my homework in high school, where she used to braid my hair while dinner simmered. For a while, we ate in silence. Then she cleared her throat. "I want to say something, and I need you to let me finish." I nodded. "I didn't know," she said. "About Dean, about the bruises, about how bad it got. I thought you were doing what you always do, solving things. You were so calm, so put together. I took it as strength." She paused, her eyes shining. "But it wasn't strength. It was survival, and I didn't see that." My throat tightened. "You know, I used to be proud of how much you could handle," she continued. "I'd brag about it to my friends, how Camille's the one who never needs help. But that's not love, is it? Praising someone for their ability to disappear into your needs." Tears filled my eyes. I looked down at my hands, remembering how often I'd wrung them behind closed doors. "No," I whispered, "it's not." She reached for my hand and held it. "I want to learn how to love the you who asks for things, who doesn't always have the answers. I want you to feel like you belong, not because of what you give, but because of who you are." It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. I didn't respond with a speech. I didn't tie it into a neat, emotional bow. I just sat there holding her hand, letting the silence do the healing for once, because some moments don't need words. They just need presence. That night, back home, I pulled out the journal I'd abandoned halfway through the year. I opened to a blank page and wrote, "I am not responsible for being easy to love. I am worthy of love even when I am difficult, quiet, messy, or undone. I am not my usefulness. I am not my composure. I am not my silence." And I meant every word. It's been 11 months, not long enough to rewrite an entire family history, but long enough to tell the truth without flinching, long enough to say no without guilt, long enough to stop performing. It's April again, the first warm day of the season, the kind of light that makes the walls in your apartment look less like barriers and more like belonging. I'm standing in my kitchen when I hear the ping of a text message. It's from my mother. "Sunday brunch, just us girls, no pressure, but I'd love for you to come. No group thread, no guilt, just an open door." I stare at it for a moment, and then I smile. It's not the first invitation I've gotten in the last few months, but it's the first one that doesn't feel like it's trying to pull me back into the role I used to play. The first time I said no to one of Mom's just come by real quick requests. She didn't sigh or guilt trip me. She just replied, "Thanks for being honest. Let me know when you've got the energy." The first time I didn't bring a dessert to a family dinner, Alina texted me later, "Was weird not seeing you in hostess mode, but also kind of nice. Hope you actually ate hot food for once." It hasn't all been pretty. There are still times I feel the sting of being misunderstood. Still moments when someone jokes that I'm so organized it's scary, and I have to swallow the urge to shrink myself. But something's changed. Not them, me. And because I changed, they had to choose whether they'd meet me here or watch me walk away. Most of them chose to stay. Sunday comes fast. I pull up to Mom's house wearing jeans, no makeup, and a little gold necklace that says enough. A gift I bought for myself. No occasion. The door's already open. Inside, sunlight pours across the kitchen floor. The table is set, simple. Mismatched mugs, a platter of fruit, pancakes that are clearly store-bought, and 3 seats. I exhale, not because I'm nervous, but because I'm present. For the first time in years, I'm not walking into this house ready to be useful. I'm just walking in. Alina greets me first, her arms thrown around me before I can speak. "You came," she says. "I wanted to," I reply. "That's the difference. I didn't feel obligated. I chose this moment. We sit, we eat, we laugh about a video Mom saw on TikTok of someone making coffee with garlic. "Why would anyone do that?" she asks, genuinely horrified. And we don't talk about the past, not at first. The healing is in the now. At one point, Lily, Alina's daughter, runs in from the backyard, holding a wilted daffodil. She plops it on my lap like a trophy and says, "You come to brunch now. That means you're part of the sister club." I glance at Alina, who's watching with a soft smile. "She came up with it this morning," she says. "Woke up and said, 'We need Camille in the sister club.'" I don't cry, but something inside me clicks into place, not because I feel included, but because, finally, I don't feel like I have to earn it. After the plates are cleared and the coffee's gone cold, Mom reaches across the table. "I've been thinking," she says, "about how often we expect women to disappear for the comfort of others, to smile through things, to make sure everyone else is okay." I nod slowly. We're taught that's love. "I thought it was," she admits, "but I see now, love isn't supposed to cost you yourself." Her words feel like both an apology and a vow. She doesn't say, "I was wrong," but she doesn't need to. She's showing up differently. That's what matters. Later that week, I finally do something I'd been avoiding for years. I open the old box in the back of my closet. It's full of things from the life I had with Dean, photos, old documents, letters I never sent. I go through them one by one. Not with anger, not even with grief, just clarity. There's a picture from our honeymoon. We're smiling. I remember taking it. I remember exactly how I positioned the camera to hide the bruise under my arm. I tear it in half. It's not about vengeance. It's about truth. I kept so much of my pain quiet because I thought if I made it loud, I'd lose people. But I see now, the people who loved me conditionally were never mine to keep. The ones who love me now, they've seen the cracks, and they stayed. I start to share pieces of my story online, anonymously at first, then with my name. I write about leaving abuse, about being called cold when I was just protecting myself, about how healing doesn't always look like reconciliation, but sometimes, if you're lucky, it does. And the messages come pouring in. I thought it was just me. My family said I was dramatic. Thank you for putting words to what I couldn't explain. I host a small gathering 6 weeks later. Nothing fancy. Just 5 women I've met online who live nearby and want to talk about what it means to rebuild yourself from scratch. We sit on the floor in my apartment with wine and blankets and too many snacks. We tell the truth. One of them, a woman named Sierra, says, "I feel like I'm finally allowed to exist without performing." And I nod, because that's it. That's the work. That's the thing no one teaches us, but we all have to learn. We don't exist to be easy. We exist to be whole. We exist as we are. The next morning, I wake up to a text from Alina. "We're thinking of planning a beach trip this summer. Small thing. Just the sister club. You in?" I reply without hesitation. "I'm in, but I'm not organizing anything. I just want to show up and read trashy novels in the sun." She sends back a laughing emoji. "Good. We want the real you. The one who doesn't have to manage everything. The one who doesn't have to shrink. The one who belongs, not because she's helpful or perfect or quiet, but because she's herself." That's the ending I didn't think I'd get. But it's the one I wrote by surviving. It's the one I chose by staying. Have you ever been excluded by the people who were supposed to love you most? What did you do with that pain? Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this one made you feel seen. We see you. You're not alone. And you don't have to disappear to be loved.